I just started teaching at a new school this fall. It's a tiny school district at the top of the Pinky Finger in the lower peninsula of Michigan. Classes are small. The largest class on campus is 15 students. There are 147 students altogether in K 12, but it is the hardest teaching job I have ever had. The hardest part? There is one teacher per subject area at the middle and secondary level. So who do I collaborate with? Who's got my back? No one else teaches what I do. Even though they may teach the same students, I am missing my inseparable alliances. Yes, alliances. You know, those friends and colleagues you can go to when inspiration has dried up or when you forget how to spell the word was because it's just been that kind of day. The colleague you can go to when you've had a light bulb go on and you just want someone to share a wouldn't it be cool if moment with. It's stressful and lonely and frustrating. It seems way harder than it used to be. Well, I'm a bit stubborn, so I will surely stick it out for a while, but many teachers aren't. Let's look at some statistics. Less than 15% of teachers would recommend their profession to others. 91% of teachers suffer from stress. As many as 41% of teachers leave their jobs within 5 years of starting. If you count bus drivers, counselors, and librarians along with teachers, there were about 270,000 fewer school staffers in July 2022 than there were in January 2020, according to preliminary data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. To go on, 36,000 teacher vacancies exist in the nation, and 163,000 positions are filled by teachers who aren't fully certified or who are not certified at all. So, what's the reason for these gloomy numbers? About 75% of pre K to grade 12 teachers who participated in an American Federation of Teachers survey reported that conditions have changed for the worse over the past 5 years. The reasons included their workload, greater responsibilities, unrealistic expectations, student behavioral issues, pay that doesn't keep up with inflation, a lack of support from school leadership, and a lack of support from parents. About 74% of respondents said they would not recommend the teaching profession to a prospective new teacher. With 30 years as a teacher, I can verify that teachers today are asked to do more than ever. Here are the tasks I am required to manage at the school where I currently work in Michigan. All kidding aside, in my first teaching job way back in 1991, of the 30 things on that list, I was responsible for only 5 of them. I was supposed to design effective lessons, thoughtfully grade assignments, revise lessons based on student progress, develop positive relationships, record daily lesson plans, and put my grades in the gradebook. That's it. Research from the 1980s and 1990s reported that teachers today make 1,500 decisions on a typical day. Given the number of added responsibilities, including the introduction of technology to instruction and the recent pandemic, this number is probably much higher today. The often reported fact that those decision making numbers are similar to those of air traffic controllers rings true. Decision making is nonstop throughout the day. A teacher's brain is always thinking, who will work best together for certain tasks? How can I make this lesson available to students who are absent? Who do I need to keep apart? What's my plan A? What's my plan B? What's my plan C? And just in case the Wi-Fi goes out, what's my plan D? When you have this much to do, you don't have time to do any of it well. Under constant stressful conditions, one can only try to survive. It is difficult, if not impossible, to thrive. In a 2017 study, Williams suggests that with most teachers putting in endless hours to achieve ever harder targets, there is a greater certainty of burnout than reward. He goes on to say that the current mismatch between teachers' aspirations, interests, strengths, knowledge, and the job they are expected to do is so demotivating that it leads to an annual exodus. What needs to be overturned is an accountability system that squeezes the last drop of joy out of day-to-day teaching. Another recent survey indicated that teaching is still generally viewed as a long-term career. Only a small percentage see teacher training as a route to another career. This amplifies the problem of teacher attrition. Even teachers who are committed to the profession find their commitment eroded in a very short space of time. It is not as if they were not aware that teaching was going to be demanding. However, they feel that the demands of the job outstrip their capacity to adapt. They feel incapable of doing their job, or at least incapable of doing it well. Santoro hit the nail on the head when she said teachers weren't just burned out, they were demoralized. There is not one primary cause for the mass exodus of teachers from the profession, but rather a constant pile of tasks and requirements that has been added to over time, weighing down even the strongest and most stubborn educators. It is a war of attrition. Attrition? Well, by definition, attrition is the action or process of gradually reducing the strength or effectiveness of someone or something through sustained attack or pressure. Sound familiar? So who brought the fight to the teachers? Campus leaders have responded. In an effort to improve teachers' well-being, campus and district leaders admonish, after you get done with all of your email, don't forget about your self-care. Also, don't forget to fill out your log to document your SEL practices before the next SEL professional development meeting. And remember, you need to make an intentional decision that you matter. Give yourself permission to do something less than perfect. Deliberately focus on self-care with daily mindful practice. And don't forget, check in with yourself throughout the day and respond to your own individual needs with targeted actions. 1,000 more decisions and things to do, anybody? I ran across a recent article titled, How to Help Teachers Win the Burnout War. Wait, what? Why is this a war that teachers have to win? Where are our allies? A recent article in Education Week indicated that our allies might indeed include our administrators. The article reported that when school principals contribute to a supportive school climate and avoid demanding practices, teachers do experience less burnout. For example, one study found that teachers whose principals gave them more autonomy in instruction showed fewer burnout symptoms. This correlates to the research to self-determination theory. You know, that process by which individuals control their own lives. At the turn of the millennia, a study was written that ties self-determination to motivation, and it continues to be cited by education researchers today. The study suggests 3 factors that can contribute to a person's motivation to persevere. First, people who feel competent, able, and effective at their tasks will be motivated to continue. Second, people who feel connected to others and have a sense of belonging are more motivated to keep going. Finally, when a person has autonomy, that is, when they are able to make choices that align with their own goals and values, they will also be more motivated to persevere. So how can we enable teachers to tap into feelings of competency? In a recent study in the International Journal of Education Management, it says that if schools want to improve the effectiveness of their teachers, they need to focus on enhancing self-efficacy of their teachers by encouraging teacher collaboration. Well, how does that work? Well, through positive feedback. Cognitive evaluation theory has shown that positive feedback can influence a teacher's intrinsic motivation and their perceptions about their own competence. One clear source of this feedback is the peer group, and positive feedback coming from peers is likely to alter the teacher's perceptions. By contrast, teachers working in isolation experience negative feelings about themselves. So the thinking is that collaboration is positively related to teacher self-efficacy. Great! But how do we help a teacher be more effective? Well, I have an idea. The Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development launched the Whole Child Initiative back in 2007. They wanted to refocus education from emphasizing only academic achievement to one that also promoted child development and success over time. Their vision was to encourage policymakers to move toward a stance about educating the whole child as a sustainable, collaborative action. A survey by the Hunt Institute found that nearly 9 in 10 voters, or 85%, think that a whole child education is important for schools to provide because, quote, a teaching approach that acknowledges the full scope of a child's development lays the foundation for lifelong learning, ensuring that teachers are well equipped to be engaged learners. So, what are the tenets of the whole child movement? Students enter school healthy and learn about and practice healthy lifestyles. Students learn in an environment that is physically and emotionally safe. Students are actively engaged in learning. Personalized learning is supported by qualified, caring adults. And students are challenged academically and prepared for success in college or further study, and for employment and participation in a global environment. Well, gee, let's think about this for a minute. If it's good for kids, why wouldn't this platform also be a good idea for teachers? What if there was an equal focus on teacher needs? What if there was a nationwide goal to, quote, develop a teacher support system that acknowledges the full scope of the demands a teacher faces every day in order to lay the foundation for lifelong learning, ensuring that teachers are well equipped to engage learners? After all, teachers are on the front lines of implementing the whole child model. Would this action not be more effective and successful if we had healthy whole teachers? I certainly think so. If we rewrote the whole child tenets to consider the whole teacher instead, they might read something like this. Each teacher enters school healthy, and the campus provides opportunities throughout the day to practice a healthy lifestyle. Each teacher works in an environment that is physically and emotionally safe. Each teacher is actively engaged and connected to colleagues, the school, and the broader community. Each teacher has access to personalized learning and is supported by qualified, caring administrators. Each teacher is challenged to be creative and innovative and works with colleagues to ensure student success. To me, the whole concept of whole teacher makes perfect sense. So how do we use these ideas to win this war of attrition? Well, we start by gathering allies, colleagues in the room next door, down the hall, on the other side of the building, because an alliance is an association formed for mutual benefit. And who better to support teachers than other teachers who know exactly what they are experiencing? One study reports that a key feature of effective teacher preparation is coherence, which is defined as the quality of forming a unified whole. They shared that one way to achieve coherence is to build connections between literacy, ELA, and content area courses through joint planning. Together, the literacy and subject area teachers can identify disciplinary knowledge, skills, habits of mind, and all those practices that are unique to a specific discipline in order to build an iterative, spiraling curriculum. Another study suggests that when teachers train together, they are able to consider and understand subject trajectories, sequences, and learning progressions while collaboratively working on curriculum and problems of professional practice. If teachers preparing for life in the classroom are working together on these types of integrations, why don't they continue the practice when they get out there in the real world? Part of the problem may be isolation. They aren't with a cohort anymore, and beginning a collaboration with teachers you don't know can be intimidating. To which I might respond by asking the veteran teachers why they aren't reaching out to the new teachers. But in my experience, there are some other possibilities. One, we've already discussed. Today's classroom teachers have more responsibilities to take care of than ever before. Another possibility is siloing. Teachers so focused on their own content that they miss opportunities to benefit from the strengths of their colleagues. Let me read you a quote. Providers from diverse professional backgrounds address the increasingly complex needs of those they serve by practicing in coordinated teams to help improve outcomes and streamline services. Doesn't that sound great? But it didn't come from a public school educator. It came from a nursing school website. Healthcare providers are getting it right these days, and they call this practice interprofessional education. And I think that should sound like education too, because educators are professionals, and educators stand to gain much in the way of help for each other, and as a result, help for their students when they share the challenge of planning. Let's think back to the idea of caring for the whole teacher so they in turn can care for the whole child. Teachers also have a right to a healthy, positive environment in which to work. They have a right to feel safe, not only physically, but emotionally. The work teachers do should be intriguing and inspiring, and in their quest for innovation, teachers should also feel supported as they do the hard work from recess to teaching the most difficult concepts. Finally, the work teachers are asked to do should be challenging, not mindless recitation of canned curriculum, but work in the Goldilocks zone, where teachers have the right amount of time to teach their own curriculum, the right amount of time to connect with the ideas of those in other disciplines, and the right amount of time to figure out ways to surround students with the care and knowledge they need to sustain improved academic growth. As I mentioned earlier, the business of school has the capacity to take the joy out of a job that most teachers went into with high expectations for making a difference in the lives of children. How is it possible to get that joy back? In short, collaborate, share the load, work together to produce innovative, creative solutions to common problems of practice. Empirically, many studies have shown that creativity can nurture psychological well-being. Creativity has the potential to satisfy people's needs to be unique and to help them nurture their own self-efficacy. During creative activities, individuals fulfill their need for self-actualization. Therefore, they're more likely to find their life more satisfactory and meaningful. Doesn't this sound great? Less stressful? Problem is, creativity isn't a solitary affair. In fact, one study quoted that two heads were better than one when it came to creativity in the development and implementation of course content. And another study advises that taking advantage of the ideas brought forward by team members during conversations can also lead to innovative breakthroughs and creative problem solving. In a study on creativity at Disney Studios, researchers found that innovation and collaboration were everyone's responsibility. At Disney, creative responses are the mission, and an innovative, thriving culture of collaboration is the result. They believe that to collaborate is to operate collectively in pursuit of a common goal. One researcher says any grand pursuit will need a team to bring it to fruition, and how that team operates in concert is critical for its success. Another says, in an ideal, innovative environment, the fastest accelerant to personal excellence will be generous collaboration. I personally experience this effect every time I sit down with colleagues to plan a new project. Collaboration is essential, and sharing really is caring, not only for psychological well-being, but in order to devise the best, most innovative ways to improve student outcomes. In the words of Margaret Mead, never underestimate the power of a small group of people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. Teachers' work lives are full of uncertainty. It is difficult to feel safe when your job depends on student performance, in the midst of an overabundance of tasks and less than attentive students. In his book on achievement gaps, Lee reports that American students' achievement should have improved at least 2 times more than it did over the past several decades. He believes that many American students' underachievement is largely a consequence of untapped potential. That is, inadequate and inequitable educational opportunities and efforts throughout the education pipeline. One teacher cannot hope to tackle this looming issue alone. Collaboration, in addition to fostering creativity, has the potential to reduce the perceived psychological costs that emerge from challenging job demands like dealing with heterogeneous groups of learners in the classroom. We've talked about the term autonomy and how autonomy motivates teachers by giving them the freedom to do what they know is right for students. There's another term, collective autonomy, that describes the interdependence related to collaboration and the shared responsibility of teaching. Research confirms that there's a positive effect of teacher collaboration on teachers and school culture, student achievement, and teaching practices. Additionally, the increased emphasis on competency-based education makes collaboration even more important. Knowing the facts isn't enough anymore. To help students meet standards, teachers not only have to know the facts, but must also know how to sort through the zettabytes of information, pull out relevant evidence, and put their thoughts together in a way that is true yet compelling. The responsibility is terrifying and overwhelming. Teachers need each other more than ever. The silos must fall. Teachers must work together to share their expertise with each other and with students. There is, after all, safety in numbers. There's a paradox in teaching that leads to isolation rather than engagement. First, classrooms are full of students, and there are few opportunities for teachers to discuss their work with other colleagues. At the same time, teachers may view their classrooms as a means of protection from outside interference in a world where administrators ask more and more of them. However, while professional isolation leads to a state of burnout and a feeling of hopelessness, a collaborative atmosphere is conducive to professional growth and job satisfaction. So how does that happen? By joining together in dialogue that sparks innovation and creativity in the development of intriguing instructional tools. That is, it happens through teacher talk. Teacher talk shapes expectations and ambition, shapes views about what is possible and what is not, with regard to themselves and their actions, and with regard to the colleagues they work with, the students they work for. Ultimately, teachers are there to help their students succeed. Some of the most productive teacher talk occurs during collaboration, when teachers focus on students' existing knowledge and how to build on and expand it. Researchers used to think that theory was the solution to problems in teaching practice. Now, however, there is a new paradigm that states practice improves practice. In this new way of looking at collaboration, teachers get together to devise best practices outside of formal meetings. Informal interactions, which might take place over meals, drinks, walks, allows individuals to get to know each other on a personal, not just a professional level. Taking advantage of the ideas brought forward by team members, these conversations can also lead to innovative breakthroughs and creative problem solving, which can be more difficult to achieve in a more formal setting. So while dedicated time for collaboration is necessary, informal conversations can also lead to solutions for improving student outcomes. Earlier, I mentioned that relationships are important in a teacher's motivation to teach, and I think a critical relationship is that of campus administrator to teacher. This has the potential to be a powerhouse partnership, but is often adversarial, as principals add more and more structures to try and stem the downward spiral of student underachievement. There's a resentment that grows from this apparent lack of concern for teacher welfare and lack of recognition of teacher professionalism. A study about building trust between principals and teachers stated, effective principals build trust and emphasize teaching to create a school climate conducive to increased collaboration, which in turn promotes the quality of teaching practices and student learning. The interaction among increased trust, emphasis on instruction, and collaboration in a school could enhance teachers' beliefs regarding what they can do in the classroom. In another related article, the author states, as a colleague who listens and as a champion who is invested in the teacher's problem-solving process, the principal creates conditions within the school for shared instructional leadership and successful innovation that benefits students and sustains teachers. Yes, Katie Glazer, that's exactly what I think too. Imagine this typical scenario. A teacher opens a curriculum manual. She shares the assigned digital document to her students and pulls up the canned presentation to share with students. Sometimes it's okay, mindless work that's easy. But the work is not hers. It's not inspiring. Sometimes it doesn't even seem to make sense. But that's what's on the calendar for today's installment, so it must be done. It's so hard to teach someone else's curriculum. She doesn't really know the purpose, even after reading the explanation in a 15-page curriculum document rife with excruciating detail. The nuance is missed. There's no sense of place for the canned curriculum amongst the classes a student goes to every day. With a sigh, the teacher turns to the next lesson in the book. In an age when silos should be torn down, artificial silos are going up within the guise of structured curriculum. What would happen if teachers were actually allowed to work together to make modification to these curricula and connect it across the disciplines? I quote, "Teachers engaged in a collaborative job structure are more likely to feel that their work has a positive impact on the work and well-being of others, thereby leading to the willingness to help others more." More engagement, more willing to help. Today's workers are going to hold multiple jobs, move around. They're going to have a diverse resume. And consequently, workers, in other words, our students of the future, need to be able to transfer skills and knowledge across a wide variety of contexts. If teachers are truly preparing students for life beyond the classroom, isn't helping them learn how to transfer knowledge from one subject to another important? Well, of course it is. Transfer of knowledge can be accomplished by creating workplace context in the classroom. For example, authentic simulations where classroom learning is designed to mimic the professional setting can enhance work readiness for students, a goal of many project-based learning scenarios, significantly improving a student's work readiness. This is so true. Think about it. An engineer creates a report on the addition of a new design feature. She must not only factor physics and mathematics into her work, she must also communicate the information to others in well-written documentation. A hydrologist must have the scientific knowledge to study the effects of non-point source pollution and calculate its effects on a river ecosystem. But that same hydrologist must also be able to market the results in order to effect change in the habits of humans causing the problem. When teachers collaborate, they can recreate these kinds of professional scenarios. And did you notice that the collaborations I mentioned were not traditional blends of humanities, but instead a blending of math, science, and ELA? Think about that. Why is ELA always paired with history? Is that the only option? And is that the best option? Why not pair history with government economics and statistics? Why not pair biology and environmental science with reading and writing? To meet the needs of students in today's information-laden, change-ridden, global society, they need to be prepared for anything. Maintaining traditional pairings or protecting silos won't make that happen. In the 90s, interdisciplinary projects were all the rage in schools. In my first year of teaching in 1991, teachers belonged to teams. I was on the blue team, and every 6 weeks we came together as a team to construct and implement an interdisciplinary project with a driving question that led students to explore a topic from 5 different viewpoints, to match the 4 core classes and the foreign language class that they were required to take. This was an awesome experience. The students maintained their regular schedules, but as they moved from classroom to classroom, they picked up the project and worked toward its completion. The project ended with students presenting their work in a public showcase. The students involved in this project saw real connections between content areas and how they complemented one another. 30 years later, research shows that the ability to make these kinds of connections is even more important. However, where these types of integrations were once supported and commonplace, They are less so today. While project-based learning seems to be gaining momentum as a pedagogy, and while it provides some opportunities for this type of cross-curricular collaboration for students and teachers, many project-based learning campuses are still tied to a traditional schedule with blended courses and common integrations: world literature and world history, American literature and American history, biology and chemistry, algebra and physics. True interdisciplinary campuses are rare. Thinking about interdisciplinary work reminds me of the emphasis on reading in the disciplines that is so popular. But while scientists and mathematicians and history teachers may be really good at their own content areas, are they really experts in reading or writing? Do they have experience in guiding students to deeper comprehension as they read? Or how to teach students to develop that perfect thesis statement and persuasive evidence? Probably not. But you know what? There are experts in the building, just down the hall. ELA teachers are trained professionals. They went to teacher school to figure out how this works, and their jobs depend on them doing it well. So why are subject area teachers, other than ELA teachers, tasked with teaching reading and writing? It's a common fallacy to think that teachers can teach anything. It's simply not true. In the 5 years from 2020 to 2025, the amount of data created, captured, copied, and consumed is expected to triple from 64 zettabytes to 180 zettabytes. Oh, well, what's a zettabyte? 2 to the 70th power, 1 sextillion bytes. So content area teachers outside of ELA have enough to sort through without having to learn a completely new teaching subject, which may be way outside their purview. With 20% of the teacher workforce becoming alternatively certified and no common standards for alternative teacher preparation, how prepared are these teachers for the rigors of teaching subject areas, much less disciplinary reading and writing strategies? The introduction to the Common Core states that students will build content knowledge by establishing a base of knowledge across a wide range of subject matter and become proficient in new areas through research and study. Students will learn how to read purposefully and listen attentively to gain both general knowledge and discipline-specific expertise, and will refine and share their knowledge through writing and speaking. Today, 41 states and the District of Columbia have voluntarily adopted and are working to implement the standards, which ensure students are being prepared to read, write, and research across the curriculum, including history and science. With that in mind, does it not make sense to use their expertise to facilitate cross-curricular learning? If you don't use their expertise, this situation might occur. I found this blog online. It was written for science teachers. Quote, "Writing in science is its own unique genre, and it's best taught by science educators. Don't worry, you don't have to focus on grammar, syntax, or other non-science pieces of their writing. Focus on the meaning of their writing and make notes if the student's point is unclear." Wait, what? I'm a science teacher, and I always hold my students accountable for sense-making and grammar. Even though scientific arguments use evidence and data rather than belief or opinion to support a claim, and the truth of that evidence can be verified and retested, persuasive writing has specific characteristics that are germane to all subject areas. Good writing is good writing, and while a scientist may be able to write well, teaching others how to write is an entirely different skill set. We need to break down the silos. We need to take advantage of our unique expertise. I ran across some background information on this topic that I found rather ironic. It made me smile, so I'm going to share with you what I found. I'm sure you've encountered claim evidence reasoning in the literature. Some school districts are using it school-wide, but it's primarily advocated for as a way to help science teachers and students write about the experiments they do in science. Ironically, it's based on the Toulmin model of argumentation from the 50s. Toulmin was a philosopher who sought to develop practical arguments which can be used effectively in evaluating the ethics behind moral issues. Well, how about that? The process that nearly every science classroom uses today to structure their writing about science was originally developed to support arguments related to morality. Historically, folks, good writing is good writing, and all subjects rely on the same basic principles. Let's revisit that introduction to the Common Core. Notice it refers to a variety of content areas and multiple disciplines. I wanted to see if the Common Core was really tied to science standards, so I went to the Next Generation Science Standards website and looked at some representative objectives from the standards. Anyone who writes objectives knows that the verbs are what tells the teacher what skills are required, so I picked out common verbs. I did the same with the foundational standards from Common Core ELA. Then I compared the verbs and found some very interesting correlations. I found that there is an actual symbiosis between science and ELA. Both disciplines ask students to find evidence, create arguments, and analyze their observations. Both disciplines require students to solve problems and explain their thinking and revise this thinking. By this point, my curiosity was piqued, so I went to the Common Core standards and looked at two writing standards, one for writing literacy in ELA and one for writing literacy in history, science, and technology. Let's take a look at these two standards. Wait a minute. Those standards are exactly the same. So here's the question. If you have content experts who can teach these standards and do it every day, why aren't they working together with subject and content teachers to make the best use of their individual expertise? Well, I believe the answer is that they should be. But how? Where do you fit anything else into a day that's already full? I've made a case for collaboration as a motivating factor for teacher retention, for improving teacher morale and improving student outcomes. But what is the logistical reality of how this might actually work in a school? First and foremost, building and district leadership must support the concept of collaboration. Not a head nodding, yes, that sounds good, but don't ask for anything support, but a true belief that allowing teachers to develop and implement innovative ideas for building teacher efficacy and student skills is good for everyone. Consider these pairings: BioLit, EcoLit, Eco-News, ChemLit, EarthLit, EnviroDebate, StatLit. All of these are viable pairings that put different subjects together in a new way. Well, I've made a bunch of trips around the sun, and I do realize that scheduling is complicated. And as I showed you before, I am a teacher, and I know how busy teachers are. However, true collaboration requires commitment and consistency. It can be formal or informal. It can be incentivized. It can be virtual. It can be in person. What it can't be is a once-a-month mandatory meeting where teachers are forced to share a couple of formative assessment ideas with each other. Support has to come from district leadership who believe in the value of collaboration as a way to support the whole teacher, who believe that giving teachers a safe and healthy environment in which to engage in dialogue with other teaching professionals is a way to solve some of the profession's most pressing problems. I've tossed a couple of ideas around and have come up with a short list of possibilities that you see here. How about a stipend for staying after school twice a week? Maybe a breakfast club where the campus provides breakfast for teachers to come in a little early and work together. A lunch bunch, where the school actually buys lunch for teachers so they can have a working lunch. A sub club, where there is a substitute that comes in periodically to relieve a teacher so they can meet together during prep time. Or maybe switch days, where teachers switch their prep times in order to have time to collaborate with one another. There are multitudes of ways to make it happen, but there has to be a commitment. What can also be helpful in creating collaboration between ELA teachers and other content area teachers is the use of common tools, common rubrics for written work and reading comprehension, common annotation strategies, shared vocabulary lists, project design planning forums, room swap experiences, opportunities for team teachers. These shared tools and practices can help collaborating teachers engage in the conversations that lead to a common, transferable set of student learning outcomes. Here are a few examples. What you see on the screen is an example of a close reading guide I used as part of a Biochem Lit collaboration. My ELA partner and I created it together. I knew what I wanted my students to learn, and she knew how to phrase it appropriately in terms of reading standards. Believe me, it was a much better document for the collaboration. Through these guided reading activities, students became familiar with a variety of water conservation topics, from plastic pollution and macroinvertebrates as indicators of water quality to climate change and landfills. Students had choices about which articles to read, but used the same document as a close reading activity. And when it was time to discuss what they read, using this common document gave them common grounds for discussion. In addition to learning content through reading, they listened to related podcasts, not only to learn new content, but also to determine the characteristics of a successful podcast. They thought about how engaging the podcasters were, how well they connected with the audience, and whether or not the message was heard. Speaking and listening skills are also found in the Common Core ELA standards. Completion of these reading guides, in conjunction with a rubric like this, were used as formative assessments. You can see here that the rubric contains both content and ELA standards. Templates used for organizing and evaluating writing were also the same in both the Biochem and Lit classes. With common formats, students already knew how to structure their writing when they came to Biochem. It made their writing stronger, and it gave them implicit permission to seek help from their ELA teacher on their writing in science. Transfer of knowledge. It helps everyone meet the challenges of teaching and learning. Common texts can also be used to enhance collaboration. There is a connection for everything if you take time to sit with a partner and brainstorm as a team. Some texts my ELA partner and I have talked about include Romeo and Juliet paired with Biochem, Frankenstein paired with either biology or physics, and Silent Spring paired with earth science or environmental science. I know that you're probably thinking, okay, the Frankenstein and Silent Spring connections are pretty clear, pretty obvious. But Romeo and Juliet and Biochem? How? My ELA partner Christine and I were sitting at dinner, one of those informal conversations. And the talk turned to what else are classrooms. We began talking about the potential of cross-curricular activities to foster storytelling in our classes. She taught literature, I taught biochemistry. And then things began to get interesting. Our innate creativity kicked in. At the time, Christine was planning for a unit to explore Romeo and Juliet with freshmen. We discussed the characteristics of the play and the fact that it was relevant to freshmen because Romeo and Juliet were teenagers themselves. And we wondered, how can we form connections between literature and biochemistry? And suddenly, the thought occurred to us. Teenagers? Biochem. There's such an obvious connection. Hormones. And so the project Raging Hormones was born. Students created a reality television show to share an emotional scene from the play, examine the emotions, the hormones, the biochemistry behind them, and how to identify and cope with teenage angst. This was multimodal storytelling at its best. Students created a relevant interpretation of classic literature in a video that used images, gestures, audio, video, and models to share information about a scientific topic. The project met standards for 3 subjects: ELA, biology, and chemistry. Did it promote health and safety for teachers and students? Check. Engaging? Check. Supported? Yes. Challenged? Absolutely. Did this brainstorm, again, happen during a monthly forced collaboration? No. It happened at an informal meeting over dinner. And this was the beginning of what we know now will be a lifelong collaborative partnership whose goal it is to help others experience the synergy we feel as we support each other in finding ways to repair the disconnect between school and the real world that students and teachers often feel. This initial brainstorm led us to write a grant to fund the development of a year-long curriculum that blended ELA and hard science to teach students about water stewardship. Scientific storytelling was at the forefront of our new curriculum. Science would provide a purpose for writing and speaking, while ELA would provide the foundational skills needed to share ideas and findings in a thorough, logical manner. Some great integrated units came from that curriculum. One such unit was a podcasting project we called Tainted. We wanted students to learn about how humans were impacting the watersheds in their town, region, and state, and use scientific vocabulary to talk about it. And we wanted them to inspire the community to take action to preserve our most precious water resources. The interesting thing about this project is that planning for it had become problematic. Christine was out of town the weekend before project launch, and we really needed to get the basics together. We already had common rubrics and templates ready to go, but the project roadmap was not complete. What to do? Well, I on my computer and Christine in her car just settled down for a long synchronous chat. I put my phone on speaker, set up the flowchart, and as we talked, debated, and made decisions about project activities and sequencing, the flowchart was created. We couldn't wait for the project to begin. We did, however, have to consider how students could collaborate through the classroom walls, since my standalone Earth Science class didn't meet at the same time as the ELA class. Our question: how can teachers facilitate interdisciplinary collaboration while adhering to a traditional school schedule? Our answer: technology. Educational technology has opened up a world of possibilities for collaboration between teachers and students. In the past, my students chatted with a scientist from the UK during a unit on exploitation of resources. She was a bog specialist, and students did some preliminary research and prepared questions ahead of time for her to answer. My students chatted with a children's book author about structure and theme when they were writing origin stories about the beginnings of the universe. They have worked across classrooms on a common research paper using Google Docs and debated topics on a discussion board. My students have communicated with students from another district in a state across the country using Flipgrid and Google Docs to not only present ideas, but also to provide feedback and revision on projects. And there are a plethora of other platforms that can inspire students to be motivated to engage in learning and make inter-classroom collaboration a reality. My 7th graders used Canva to create infographics and were able to work simultaneously to create copy and design the poster. They were able to show each other their ideas in real time, and great discussion revolved around what graphics would be best to use and what information could best be used to illustrate specific concepts. I recently used Perusall to annotate and discuss articles with fellow students in a graduate class. It's an annotation and discussion board all in one. Teachers can use it for free as long as the articles you post are under copyright restrictions, and there are plenty of open educational resources out there that you can upload. And Miro is an online whiteboard system that eliminates the need for expo markers and whiteboards, and has lots of free tools to make inter-classroom collaboration possible between classrooms, across campuses, and even across state boundaries. Just as collaboration has been identified as a key factor in teacher motivation and retention, it has also been identified as a key factor in the sustainability of engagement in e-learning. As you've seen, there are obviously many choices for online collaborative platforms. The challenge lies in creating a group mindset where all the players are equally invested in creating quality products and solutions. Garrison's community of inquiry model suggests 3 key factors that can help influence a student's motivation to pursue digital work: social presence, cognitive presence, and teacher presence. Synchronous meetings where students can see one another and have live conversations, group chat rooms for discussion and planning, and online discussion and planning boards can all provide opportunities for relationship building, Cognitive presence relies on the choice of online collaborative tools. The tools must meet the Goldilocks standard mentioned earlier. The level of difficulty needs to be just rigorous enough to engage deeper thinking. Too hard and persistence is affected, too easy and boredom sets in. Finally, teacher presence is critical. The instructor must be present and available through timely and consistent feedback. Participate in group chats and synchronized meetings, or even in surveys sent to learners to gather input on project choices. Through these processes, as students begin to see connections and relevance with what they do in school and their lives beyond the classroom walls, when they collaborate in interesting ways, it increases their motivation to learn. Researchers support the idea that the use of technology is motivational and it's a creative force when it's used as part of an authentic, inquiry-based curriculum. Reconstructive exploration, it's called. Taking and synthesizing knowledge in new ways is motivational because students get to actively make choices about what they learn based on their own original questions. However, just including technology does not ensure creativity and does not ensure increased motivation. When students are actually involved in using technology to construct artifacts, they are tapping into the creative potential that they all have. It's this active construction of knowledge that helps motivate students to engage, and technology enhances the ease with which students can participate, both online, face-to-face, and in between classrooms. If teachers either aren't allowed to or refuse to break down their silos and work together, students will never get off the farm. They'll struggle to see connections, and that struggle may follow them beyond the classroom walls. It's our obligation to show them the world and delight in their ability to flourish. So here's what I observe and hear when students are working on collaboration and an integrated project in my classroom. This is fun. I see how this fits together now. I have some extra help. Wow, this is important. Both teachers are involved in this project. We ought to be able to do this more often. Here's what my ELA partner and I think. This is fun. Students are seeing connections. We are good at this, and so are they. It's important work to make these connections. We should be able to do this more often. Integrated collaboration forms a positive feedback loop that benefits the whole teacher. Teachers working together are healthier because they can tap into each other's creative energies. They feel safer because they have help to figure out how to close learning gaps. Teachers are engaged because they are in conversation with other professionals to sort out solutions to complex problems in order to make a difference for kids. They feel supported because they're not in the game alone anymore and can find inspiration in solidarity, and challenged because finding the connections between subjects is a skill that can be transferred from teacher to teacher, from teacher to student, and from the student to life beyond the classroom walls. Now, more than ever, teachers need to tap into their innate creativity to devise new ways to work together to solve problems of practice, because only creativity can help us all go beyond ordinary resolutions to extraordinary options. For creativity is the seemingly magical capacity to imagine the unseen. Innovation is the act of manifesting the creative into something tangible. Creativity is very simply the action of turning a thought into a thing. It's time, teachers and campus leaders, to turn collaboration into a thing. Go out, be creative, find allies, and work together.